expected to make it. So
Logical Raptors fanatic.
shoot, trying to miss. Like every shot,
Logical Raptors fanatic.
try to make it. So I was gonna act surprised.
A fun guy. Obviously,
Logical Raptors fanatic.
love the game of basketball. I mean, it's just more questions you have to ask me in order for me to tell you about.
Logical Raptors fanatic.
I just can't give you a whole spiel. I don't even know where you're sitting at.
Salute real ones. Mike G back here with Logical Raptors fanatic. And I think we touched on the cupboards in the value of the Raptors two-way contracts. And now I think I want to dive deeper into it. So enjoy.
We got a great deal out of this, like we won a championship. So we're happy, and honestly, it's on to the next. This is the NBA, and this is how it works. I always say, there's no time to go out and you can't cry. You can't go and hide under a table and cry. Like honestly, I've lost no sleep. Not disappointed. It's on to the next. What's next? And I'm telling Raptor fans and everybody, don't lose one day of sleep, 1 second of sleep. We're gonna be just fine. We're gonna be all right.
So obviously in that clip, Masai says he's got us, and we shouldn't lose sleep about Kawhi leaving. We got a chip, but that championship doesn't translate immediately into actionable play. So let's look at an aspect of what happened. Well, we'll get the lay of the table and then we'll go into it more, okay? So obviously in the two-way the Raptors two or the value of the Raptors two-way contracts video, I touched on the subject of the run it back here and how and I brought out the concept of the cupboard and how we move ingredients down and up. So let's get the context of those actual moves of the cupboard ingredients and go through what we actually lost, because I think losing Kawhi and Danny Green gets painted with a brush. There are a lot more moves on the roster and a lot more people that we lost, kind of depth pieces and stuff. And the cupboards were bare, like they said, after pushing all your chips in, like I said in other videos. In order to win the championship, win in the playoffs, you have to upgrade the caliber of the 9-man rotation you have pretty much, and have the best prime talent in that 9-man group as you can. And we consolidated talent to get Marc Gasol. So obviously, let's go through it now. So OG stayed, but he was a bench player in the championship year. He did play some games. He played like 60 games in the season, I think. But obviously, family issues at the start and then his appendix surgery kind of kept him out of the championship run, which kind of sucks. He was healthy for the finale, like the finals, though, but we didn't want to kind of throw him in there without having any reps whatsoever. So all right, so then we have Chris Boucher, which was basically on the team. We went through him and we talked about how his two-way got converted that year so he could sponge off the run, and he wasn't really playing at that time. And then the next year, the run it back year, we had Serge and Gasol still in the center position. That's where we were playing him at the time. So I think he got spot minutes. That's the year that Nick kept saying he comes in, blocks a shot, gets a three. So deep bench roll. So Lorenzo Brown, we went over, waived. Marc Gasol stayed. He was a starter. Yep. Danny Green left. We know that one. Serge Ibaka stayed. He was our bench center. Yep. So Kawhi left. Yep. Jeremy Lin left. Yep. Kyle Lowry stayed and was a starter. All right. Jordan Lloyd left, obviously. We talked about him in the two-way series. We have Pat McCaw, which when we got him on that championship year, he didn't play as much. He was more of a deep bench position role. And then we switched. That's supposed to be a B, sorry. But he switched to a bench position and got more minutes in the running back here. And that's where everyone was kind of complaining, like, why are you playing Pat McCaw? He doesn't do anything. But I think his sturdy defense at point guard position, where we were kind of thin, showed like the lack of depth we had in that year, which made Nick Nurse look like a great coach because he filled in with these kind of lower or higher shelf ingredients, right? The exotic stuff from the top shelf, and made them have bench production, right? So let's continue to go through it, right? So Jody Meeks left. There's not too much to say on him, right? CJ Miles traded in the Valanciunas trade for Gasol. Malcolm Miller we went over in the two-way series. Greg Moreau I'm actually going to touch on later in this video, and Eric Moreland as well. But he left. So Norm stayed, and he stayed on the bench, right? Still in the same position. Malachi Richardson was waived earlier. Pascal Siakam stayed and started, obviously. Jonas was traded, obviously. Fred VanVleet stayed and went from bench to starter, right? So there's another upgrade. So you can see we have 2 bench guys going to starter because we lost 2 starters, right? In VanVleet and OG. So and then DeLon Wright trade, obviously. And I'll touch on the Gasol trade eventually, but uh, I'll wait on that one for a bit. Like there's no need to rush anything on that, right? So if we look at the lay of the land right here, we have 5 starters, 2 upgraded from the bench staying, right? So 3 bench players, 1 upgraded from deep bench, and 2 deep bench players, right? So that's how the kind of the depth chart shook out. Positions we'll get into a little bit more of talking about that, but I think it's more to stay on the scope of the team as a whole and not dive too hard into positions, because I think ultimately we're trying to get whatever talent in the door. So, okay, 10 players stayed, 5 open roster spots, right? We had 1 draft pick that year because we traded our other pick in the Kawhi trade, right? In 2020, second round, 59th pick because we had the second best record in the league when we won the championship, right? We picked Juan Hernandez, which obviously we kind of know didn't work out. He injured his foot and then really didn't get a chance to really mold in. But I think even at picking at 59th, you're taking a long shot. And we're going to go into it a little bit more about lower picks and undrafted prospects and kind of different aspects that they need to be able to make it, right? So ultimately, we had 4 open spots plus the 2 ways, which we went over, which were O'Shea Brissett and our man Paul Watson Jr., right? We went over their everythings in the 2-way series. If you haven't checked it out, great, like feature length almost, but I think there's a lot of information that needed to be said around the 2 ways because it's a big ingredient in how we develop and how we roster build, right? And ultimately, no real cap space. So because we were over the luxury tax in the cup year, we lost Kawhi Leonard's big salary, right? And we lost Danny Green's salary, right? And we still didn't have we were just under the luxury tax, so we couldn't really sign any guys. We didn't have space like that to really sign. We had the MLE. Obviously, we talked about that in extension series. We have the biannual exception, which obviously, if you look at the list here, we know who filled those 4 open roster spots, right? One was a biannual exception player in Stanley Johnson, which he signed 2 years. That's the basis of the biannual, right? 2 years. So Stanley Johnson signed for 2 years. And then we got Rondé Hollis Jefferson on the MLE, right? Because we didn't have Rondé's rights. So we signed him on that, right? But there's also 2 other players, interesting players that I'm going to get into now that have lessons to learn from their kind of journey with us, right? And I think ultimately learning lessons and then applying it forward is a really key aspect to this, and understanding what we do and what happens when a player doesn't hit the metrics but still has talent in the league that's still usable, just not with us. And we could necessarily utilize a different player in that position that has a higher ceiling, that's able to take the developing and is a better investment all around based on the pillars, as Malachi, or sorry, Delano Banton says, the pillars. We're gonna talk about the pillars. All right. So here are the subjects of our today's video, more or less, right? We got Terrence Davis Jr. We signed in the summer of 2019 after we won the chip, after we saw him play in Summer League. He was undrafted that year. Previous team, NCAA Ole Miss, right? And we'll go through his stuff here, I guess, quickly. So age 22. So around the right prospect age where we were looking at that time, obviously, hence back to the two-way series. He played shooting guard. He played 72 games, so he played all the games, right? Or was available for all the games, right? You know what I mean? So he started 4 games. He played 16.8 minutes, got 6.1 total field goal attempts, hit 4, 5, 6 on them. So decent for a shooting guard, right? Not a lot of attempts, but a couple on a team that he had no place kind of being on, regarding like playing great minutes on a defending champion team as an undrafted player rookie, pretty much, right? So we'll continue. So his 3-pointers, 3.4. So more than half his attempts were from 3. He shot a great clip at 388. And then I think we'll look. Yeah, free throws were decent, 8.64. So not bad regarding like the shooting dynamics of the prospect, right? And I think obviously we know he has the ups because he can take it to the rack hard, and he does have like that kind of similar to John Morant, where he has that vertical acceleration, high, quick, really fast and high, even for his shorter size. So he can get up there. So offensive rebounds, obviously, you can see he can get up there with the big guards and has a fraction, and some defensive. Yeah, 3.3 total rebounds. So an assist, 1.6. So I think we are looking at him more as we were running the ball too much in his hands, but he was able to make certain plays and kind of control the tempo sometimes. We were testing him in that kind of combo guard, situational kind of place, right? Steals, he played defense, right, too. So point 0.5 and a point 0.2 of a block for a shooting guard that's kind of small is pretty good, and that shows obviously his ups capability. But I think obviously turnovers were a big issue with him when he had the ball. You can see that it's pretty high compared to his assists, and that's not necessarily a good indicator, right? And 7.5, okay. And this is the year that actually earned him the second team all rookie, which is really interesting. Obviously, it was a weak kind of class a bit, but still, I think his patina from what the Raptors were and him playing winning minutes kind of rubbed off and gave him that shine a bit. So pretty much we signed an undrafted player and he became well had one of the best 10 rookie seasons in the league, right? So I think obviously there's going to be a little bit of notice, but I think he made a huge mistake and I don't want to go too crazy into it. I'm just going to summarize the incident as there was an argument. Um, a child was hurt a bit. Um, his spouse at the time was hurt. I I don't know the complete logistics of the situation. I think he made a really bad mistake, and I want to talk about something here that's really important. So we were desperate kind of for the best talent. He has the capability, he has the skill, he has the size, you know what I mean? He has the speed. He's obviously shows an ability to play basketball. But long term, the way we build, investing so much into the players themselves, retaining those assets and making sure they're still in the league and not in jail really kind of matters, right? So I think when he made that mistake, especially with the nature of the mistake, right? With the way we have our organization where we have prominent women in those big high positions, like the executive of basketball operations is a woman, Teresa. She's fantastic, did everything regarding the Tampa relocation and stuff. She's vital to keeping these players happy and loving Toronto. And when they say it's a first class organization, that's a huge part to her and a bunch of other great women that are working in our organization. And I'm sure they're Masai and the leadership group of the organization. Larry Tenenbaum is probably involved in this as well. Maybe. I don't know. But they obviously talked about Terence Davis and how they felt and what they felt needed to happen with him and our team because I think the purity of our messages and the things that we say, we stand on and we mean. So when we say things, you have to actually take them for real, right? Our word is our word, and we don't break it for no one, right? That's kind of the stance we have on the issues that we support, all the things we do in the community. How can you look a kid in the eye and say you're important without having that same kind of mentality throughout your organization, right? I think that's a big part of the culture aspect of what it means to have a good culture in the NBA. And I think Masai really puts emphasis, and everyone does in our organization, on equality, opportunity, and like family. Everyone's together, right? And I don't think if there's an issue that kind of divides us, I think that's where we keep everything in house, obviously, but we deal with what we have to deal with in the way we have to deal with it. And I think this is where I'm going to show this part. He actually hit the metrics, but his character, he had the right size, but he didn't have the character that the Raptors were looking for. And when Fred says Raptors guys, I think Terence Davis, unfortunately, isn't a Raptors guy. But he still made the second team all rookie team, right? So what do you do with a prospect that isn't right for you, but still has talent? So I think obviously the women of Twitter really were on him hard, hard, hard this year in the Tampa year. But I think we look to showcase him a little bit more in the aims of getting return value. Like the better he played, the higher pick we're going to get this year. Because I think after the year in Tampa started to look like it wasn't going well, I think we knew we kind of had to like clean house a bit with some of the different prospects and bring in more kind of Raptor style guys. And now that it's 2 years removed, we've kind of lost all the players that we were going to lose from that championship team. It's now time to kind of, okay, convert what we made in that transition time and let's go forward with the serious real plan now. And I think that's really interesting how he took a empty roster spot, no value draft pick or didn't trade for anyone like that, signed Terrence Davis to on the MLE because you can sign multiple guys on the MLE. It has to matter on the amounts and stuff that you can fit into that like 10 mark or 6 mark, because after 6 you get like hard capped or something if you use 10. So it's really interesting, but I'm not going to go into that right here. But based on signing guys on the MLE, undrafted guys on the MLE, giving them playing time, putting them into our development system, and creating value out of nothing, necessarily, that's what Masai meant when he's got us. That's one of the aspects of we got us. Don't worry about everyone. You see all the people leaving. Don't worry about that. We're going to be fine because I know how to get us back to where we want to be, right? And he didn't he didn't shed 1 ounce of sleep on this, and we shouldn't have, because I think Masai obviously cares so much, and he's the guy that you got to put your kind of trust in. No matter how things look, I think Masai kind of has a good idea and grasps and will always, always do what's best for the Raptors, right? The Raptors, long term, short term, whatever, you know what I mean? 50 years down the line, he's making certain choices that are positive choices. And that's how a leader should be in the NBA. And I want to get back to now. Okay, so 34 games played, 4 games started, 14.5 minutes, same field goal attempts, lesser because I think the NBA adjusted now. They had tape on him so they could see him. So obviously he was getting more coverage and more attention on the 3-point line, right? So his 3-point percentage went down a bit too. His Yeah, see, like his 2-point percent went down like a big portion because I think they learned how he likes to drive the net and his bounce wasn't a surprise anymore. And I think the game plans were more anticipating him for this year and had more lock on what he did. Obviously, his free throws improved another year in the league, shooting right, offensive rebounds similar. Lower rebounds, I think, I guess. Maybe we played him more guard dominant in the position that he was going to be traded into. So we have to preview the player in kind of the position that other teams are going to want him. We can't necessarily just play him like we want to. So obviously he got his normal shots and stuff, and it looks like his stuff stabilized. Like his defense was still there and stuff, right? Not too much fouling, but some good D. So a decent prospect. So we'll get into what we got for him, but let's go into our other guy from that year, Matt Thomas, signed in the summer of 2019, undrafted, previous team, Liga ABC, uh, Valencia Basket, and he was 25, so an older prospect. So you see how we kind of have 2 kind of groupings of prospects. Kind of we look at kind of a little bit more mature guy, and then we have like a kind of younger guy, and we like that kind of dynamic of have that keeps kind of like when we have to go completely young, there are some guys with previous experience that kind of bolster some parts of lineups and different things, right? And I think Matt Thomas was a special talent in a sense, Mr. 99, Iceman. He in his last season there at Liga ABC, he shot 99% on uncontested threes. So when he was open from the three-point line, he shot 99%. So when no one was near him, he shot almost perfect. So it shows a great shooting talent, but I think see that's where you have to like he had an amazing skill and a talent. We thought, hey, let's see if we can because Masai's been looking for this type of player for a while now. Um, a JJ Redick, a guy that can shoot threes at an extremely high clip, running off screens, just running off screens all day, right? And shooting a three while moving off screens is a really extreme talent, and you have to really work on it and master like the skill of shooting and the skill of movement and screen dynamics and all that kind of different stuff. And it's it's a tough position, and so we want to see if we could take a standstill, a ridiculously great standstill three-point shooter, and see if we can teach him to shoot them on the move, right? And that's what the experiment with Matt Thomas was. We signed him for 4 years, really like like low salary, so it wasn't like a lot of money or anything, right? But still like I think it was a part in project. And so let's see how it went out right here. So 41 games played, one game started. I think that was more the end of the year, right? Like bubble, right? So 10 minutes played, so a specialist, right? 10.7, 3.9 total, but like 2.4 3-point assists at a clip of 475. So obviously we can see in those standstill positions, he's great, right? And he shot more than two-thirds of his shots from there. Obviously, gets run off the line and kind of has to put up that midi. He had that midi on lock a bit. He used the bank a bit. Bank was open for Matt Thomas. He was a decent offensive prospect, right? And I think obviously 2 pointers, yeah. That's his midi, right? His midi because he doesn't drive the paint that much unless it was wide open and he was just him, right? So free throw percentage should have probably been higher, not gonna lie. Total rebounds. He got a couple of those longer rebounds and stuff, right? Assists, point 0.5. He was a finisher shooter. 0.2 steals, I think that's anomaly because not gonna lie, his defense was the biggest issue with him. See, when we're looking at the player themselves, when Dalano Banton talks about the pillars, so the pillars matter, right? And so like playing defense, sharing the ball, team first, full effort, right? The pillars that Delano preaches about. And I think Matt Thomas was missing a key pillar in that, right? Defense, right? And so I think ultimately that experiment failed. And obviously in the Tampa season, he got less time and everything kind of didn't work out because we kept pushing him to have that more shooting on the move role and started pushing to see if he could take that next step in that role. And he just wasn't able to. His defense wasn't anything worth kind of there he became almost kind of like doing nothing for us in a sense of of what he's really needed for on the court, because shooters would just like when he would get the ball, people would just run him off the line easy. Like they'd never give him airspace to shoot. And then he'd just never shoot. If he wasn't set and standing still, he wasn't making the shot. If it was on the move and there's a defender chasing him around the screen, he couldn't make those, right? And I think ultimately we want to look to see what we could get for him in that Tampa year, because I think that experiment kind of failed. We're looking to move forward, right? So let's look at what happened with these two guys. So Tampa Tank year, March 25th, 2021, trade deadline. We traded Terence Davis Jr. the second to the Kings for Memphis's 2021 second round pick at 46, right? Which became Dalano Banton. So ultimately that's a good kind of little swap there. I think we get in a guy that understands the pillars. Regarding his character, I don't think there are zero questions about who Delano is as a person and whether he's going to have any mishandlings similar to the other guard we kind of want to kind of groom. And I think Delano's more in the style of the new NBA, kind of bigger, more lengthier, kind of able to see the floor better because of his height and stuff. We'll get into him, all right? And then Matt Thomas traded to the Jazz for Golden State's 2021 second round pick at 47. Drafted player was David Johnson. Obviously, we went through him in the two-way kind of series, and he's on the 905 now. So wasn't fully like obviously a lesser prospect in Matt Thomas, but I think the swap over value-wise was interesting. We bring in a guy that could possibly be like a different hybrid guard, right? We looked at his numbers and stuff, kind of didn't hit the metrics, got injured, right? But no need to go really over him, but I think I want to talk more on Delano after we take a look into something interesting I found out deep diving this. So we obviously drafted Scotty off the Tampa Tank, right? And that was the fourth pick. We jumped up from seventh, right? And we traded for this pick, the 46th pick, and we traded for the 47th pick. But what happened to our 2021 second round pick, which would have been 37, so higher than this, in a special draft, because that was a really generational kind of draft that year with Scotty and Mobe at the top and stuff like that. And the depth, obviously, the shelf kind of, if you can understand the cupboard analogy, the draft is a similar way. When you have premium talent in the bottom shelf, everyone's shelved accordingly. On weaker drafts, that kind of middle shelf becomes the bottom shelf, and then more exotics come in the second round off the top, right? So there are kind of dynamics between both, obviously. And I think when we look at it, oh, so hold on, let's pop the slide, right? And dive deep. So here we can see on the slide, I've solved the mystery. Obviously, it actually took me a little bit to actually find this information. For some reason, it's ridiculously hard to find how different picks traded hands, and they don't really disclose that information. Obviously, it's not important, but in a sense, in this discussion, it is, right? And we need to look at what happened with that pick. So we traded it plus cash considerations. So that means cash considerations, the player we can add up to 3 million in cash to any trade to satisfy salary demands. So literally you can trade for a guy, right? And minimum guys don't have value and stuff. Moreland, I think, got a little bit more than the minimum. So obviously we needed to kind of trade him away instead of taking the dead money, right? And it I'm gonna get into why we did it more, but I think Greg Moreland just he was making too much and we were already over the luxury tax, right? And so we traded just for cash, pretty much, just for cash. So this is just a salary dump, and then we attach a pick, right? So Greg Monroe plus that pick on the date of 2019, February 7th. So around trade deadline. So money saving move. Signed with roster spot. Eric Moreland, center defender, can block and rebound with some passing skill. He's more of a G League talent, so I think that deep kind of bench roster. Obviously, he left in the offseason. He wasn't a big part. I think it was just more of understanding either way. If Kawhi stayed or he didn't stay, we still needed to free up that salary so we could still get Matt Thomas and like shave money off for some guys at least and get prospects in the door, right? To fill those roster spots. And this was kind of the price we paid. So recouping the value back, pretty much we got 2 picks. Ultimately in the boomerang sense of the dynamics of all this. So we shed salary, created room and the ability to sign Terence Davis II and Matt Thomas to see whether we could use the position the team was in winning. So obviously Terence Davis and Matt Thomas learned winning, which is the proper type of learning. Like people say tank and get whoever. Tanking in that year kind of sets a bad mindset in everyone's, like the players' mindsets of what the mission is. The mission is to win no matter what, no matter the cost, no matter who's on the court, right? That's that's what needs to be the focus and the truth. And the players need to believe that's all you care about. And they will be willing to sacrifice, right? That's where it comes in to having an honest message. It's wanting to actually sacrifice parts of yourself to be a collective in that great message and that movement and that journey, right? So I think ultimately the Nets traded it in a trade with Bruce Brown, Luke Kennard, and a whole bunch of other picks and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting how picks, so you're making a bet, right? You're making a future bet. So the bet was that in 2021, right, we would have a team that wasn't that good because Kawhi signed back, but obviously that's where the gamble is. So this pick could either be a tanking pick, which it was in the lottery, high lottery, second round pick, very valuable in a sense in the aspect of second round picks. Obviously, first round picks are worth way more, and top lottery is worth even more, right? We understand the dynamics, but so they're making the Nets made a future bet taking on this contract and thinking, okay, if Kawhi leaves, maybe they're not that good and this pick becomes better, right? So then after Kawhi left, they traded that pick for more value, right? In a whole bunch of there's a whole bunch of players. I'm not getting to that trade, right? But so once the value of the pick was deemed more valuable, they traded it off. So the Nets got value in between these points. So it's a markets game, right? So the stock rised when Kawhi left because we were going to be a worse team, right? And we weren't going to continue winning championships. So obviously that pick instantly became more valuable. And ultimately, TJ Thor maybe becomes someone, or maybe doesn't, or maybe the Raptors would have picked someone else that could have became that. So that's how we have to kind of look at trading away picks. People want to trade away a bunch of picks to get KD and stuff, but ultimately, years forward, you never know. It could be a generational draft, and KD got hurt. And that's the kind of the bet that Cleveland made with Mitchell, trading their future unprotected first round picks. And also Minnesota made the same gamble with trading a bunch of their unprotected first round picks, but in the time that Rudy was there. So a better trade necessarily time wise line, because Mitchell could be gone by the time that the Cleveland has to give those picks, and their positioning could entail the Jazz and Danny Ainge to get another kind of like Billy King thing where they got Tatum, Brown, and traded away another one to get like a talent, like to quickly rebuild after the point that they lost like the big three, right? So, but let's kind of glance at what happened with the picks that we got, because they were, one was originally the Grizzlies and one was the Warriors. So interesting enough, right? And when we traded for these picks, they were more secure. The value was sure. It wasn't so much of a gamble. We kind of knew where the Grizzlies were going to be and the Warriors were going to be, right? And so obviously, like, the Warriors probably seemed to finish better, and the Jazz were only looking for like a playoff rental, deep bench playoff rental, similar to Eric Moreland, but they paid for one in a guy that could shoot the three. Maybe Bogdan goes down or something. You know what I mean. You always have to kind of hedge your bets against injury-prone players. So what we did, because Gasol and Ibaka and Chris wasn't really up to speed yet, we went out and dropped kind of Greg Moreland, a different type of center, for a center that could have helped us more in the playoffs with the style of play he played, and not necessarily what Greg Monroe offered, which we thought we needed at the beginning of the year, right? So obviously the team evolves and grows, and you see different aspects of different needs and stuff. So obviously overreacting to a couple game sample size is ludicrous in my mind. It's always about getting as much data as you can, as much sample size as you can, so your findings can be more accurate, right? And that's why I always try to go super deep on everything, trying to give all the context, because I think it really matters when making up opinions and decisions. Like, I'm just throwing out information and can in conjoining my opinion with that information. But if you see the information on the screen and think something other, that's completely fine. People see different things and come to different conclusions. I see something different when I see certain things, and that's what makes me unique and a kind of special voice in this Raptors community, doing deep dives on the history and stuff, because I'm really good at history, kind of cataloging and sorting and remembering different connections and details about different things. So all right, so let's get back to this though. But so obviously the Kings might have wanted to keep this pick and actually pick Delano instead of kind of, well, they like Terrence Davis. They like Terrence Davis. He's still in the rotation. He's still playing there. He's still kind of developing. I think we just couldn't take a chance on his character and the action that he did, the mistake he did. I think he just needed a fresh start. The fan base wasn't on his side anymore. I think the first year we really invested in, loved his story, and then kind of he broke their hearts, and I think that's where a lot of the kind of negative energy came from. But no, obviously I do not in an inkling support what he did or any woman should let that happen to them, or any man, trans, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, everybody under the sun shouldn't be in a situation where they are physically attacked or emotionally abused. And I think everyone deserves to be happy, ultimately. And I believe that honestly and truly, and I hope that he learns from the mistake and actually changes as a person, because I do believe people can grow from mistakes. Like, someone can make a mistake once and never do the same thing ever again. Just because I made that one mistake one time doesn't paint them completely forever. But I think when you're making bets, you need to make the surest bet. And Masai only makes sure bets for us. And we couldn't bet on Terence Davis the second anymore. So, missing a piece to the Raptors puzzle, like I said, in the Raptors effect, I think character and size really matter. And character obviously matters. And this one, the Warriors traded to the Pelicans, then the Jazz traded to other. I'm not going to go through it. It's the Warriors pick was seen as a low value pick, more like a 59th pick, similar to what the Juan Hernandez pick was, right? And these picks traded hands early, right? So 2018, so really early, so it's way future trades. You don't even know, they had no clue who was being picked here, right? So that's ludicrous in my mind in a sense. Masai made a kind of a calculated bet to kind of empty the cupboard a little bit and then hope that on the backside he could recoup the value. And I believe he did. I think even at 37 we might have grabbed Delano, maybe. So, or maybe I don't know. Like, who's to say he does any trades? But obviously, he knew he needed to get some good second round picks in this legendary draft. So, recouping that value and moving on from those two prospects were, I think, the right decisions after not hitting the metrics and the expectations we kind of set out for our players. And this keeps everyone in the organization honest and accountable. They see what happened to that guy. Hey, don't do the Terence Davis, or don't do the Matt Thomas and don't grow, because they'll boot you out quick. You won't be part of the future for too long, right? And I think that's the precipice where I want to tie back to Malachi. But this video is obviously getting long, so I'm just gonna cut into the last slide and kind of leave it at that, right? So here we go, the final product, because you can talk about draft picks and all that stuff, but it matters kind of who you pick and what happens with them. And I think out of all the mistakes and whatever we learned, we recouped Delano Banton from the process. And I'm going to go over his G League stats real quick, small sample size. He was with us a lot of games, 64 games in total. He was doing double duty back and forth. And I think this is like the new hybrid model of how we maybe take bench guys first year, and kind of Coloco might get the same treatment because it showed results, I think. So let's go through it. 33 minutes played on the Raptors 905. Got a lot of shots, like 20 shots, right? Shot 50%, so decent, right? A couple of threes, so less than a quarter, right? So less than a quarter. We got to understand that, but hit a great clip at 393, right? So his two pointers, rim runs, and like middies and whatever, probably mainly mid run, probably like rim runs and stuff, right? Because he's not too much of a shooter yet, but he's a great slasher and his speed comes to fruition, and he gets a lot of attempts at the basket just from outspeeding guys. So I think we're going to look to probably see this number kind of increase more with him. But then also when he starts using the mid-range more, you might see it decrease a little bit again, but we should see a higher increase immediately, at least this season that we're currently in right now, right? The 2022 23 season. So I'm not going to go into his stats just this year. Like I said, small sample size, no real need. But this is kind of like 7 games over a whole season span. So it's kind of like a couple of snapshots of his game kind of put together. And you can understand that he was growing in this year. So some of these numbers are going to be higher. And that's why I have the playoff thing to kind of see his kind of finished product kind of a bit. So let's continue here. Total rebounds 6.1, or sorry, defensive rebounds 6.1, offensive rebounds 2.9. So length, speed, yep. Total rebounds 9. Wow, for a guard. That's this is he's hitting on metrics right now, right? We saw Justin Champagny was a rebounding machine in that two-way kind of series, had a great three ball as well. So that's where I'm seeing these kind of connections. Maybe we can link them together and have like two guys that kind of fit a similar style but have unique different skills at the same time so they can be interchangeable and played with each other and played separately, and you know what I mean, like the way that Fred Van Vliet and Pascal Siakam are played now. Obviously maybe not on the starting lineup. We'd hope to get Banton up to like a starting level point guard, but we'll see, right? Everything takes time. It's a growing process. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to learn from those mistakes and continue to grow, right? So this is just a small snapshot. This is just his rookie season, 905 minutes. So against similar rookies and like older guys that aren't kind of fully NBA caliber. So I think you got to take these stats with a grain of salt in a sense. But I think ultimately, if we could convert this and have better percentages, right? Because more experience and better IQ. And so a couple numbers might increase here or there or whatever. But ultimately, if we can translate this whole stat line, like look at it. We'll continue on here now. 5.9 assists, so he's obviously a playmaker, has the ability to pass the ball. 1.3 steals, so a great defender in a sense. 0.6 blocks, so able to rotate into the paint and kind of not be mismatched too much out of the paint by bigger bodies. Turnovers, obviously, we talked about the Matt Thomas thing, but he obviously looks like a way better prospect from point guard when he has literally just half his assists, right? Half his assists, but they're like big number assists, right? So 6 is a high number. So more turnovers is understandable, but you need to quantify obviously that assist and turnover is kind of almost in the same kind of breath a bit. So 24 points, yeah. So like he can definitely put the ball in the basket, but I think his shooting, obviously his 3-point shooting wasn't nearly up to snuff where his kind of slasher game was and stuff. So let's look at kind of the finished product of the year a bit. 2-game sample size, 39 minutes, got a couple more attempts in the playoffs. We wanted to check them after the season and all that kind of stuff. We wanted to honestly check him to see if he could go, right? And I think I touched on this in the two-way series. I think if Reggie Perry was playing that game, they would have won the G League championship this year. And this is also in part of why I think that, because they were so spectacular. Banton and Champagny were ridiculously just unloading in the playoffs, like unreal video game numbers. So let's continue. General field goal of 5.33. So that's great for a guard, right? If you understand it. And look, he pumped up his threes, but his volume went down, or his clip went down. So he still needs to work on his threes, right? We know that. We see he still has to work on his shooting, right? But his 2-pointers went up, right? Like I said, you want to see that increase. If he's going to be a main slasher and using that part of his bag, more or less using his speed. He needs to be able to convert that speed into baskets, right? And so this is critical for him to kind of improve his 2-point percentage, which is mainly slashing, because he does a little bit of mid-range floater game. He's got that great Iceman George Gervin kind of like esque finger roll, but I think ultimately he will develop better in that kind of aspect of his game around the basket and stuff. So free throws, clutching, similar as Champagny, they hit their clutch free throws when it mattered, kind of really nice. So showing that he can still shoot in the clutch, right? So I think it matters. Yes, his 3-point percentage was down, but I don't think it was due to choking. It was due to kind of just not having that three ball developed enough yet, right? So then we go to total rebounds, upped his rebounds, upped his assists to 9. 9 assists in the playoff. This is a ridiculous stat line. 29.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 9 assists with a steal and 2 blocks. Are you kidding me? Banton is a outstanding prospect. And swapping TD for him, I think I like Banton way more than TD, not gonna lie. And I think that's where the precipice of this whole series and all of that, right, comes into play of the Raptors developing value. We develop value by developing Terence Davis II and Matt Thomas to a point. Obviously, they weren't long term prospects with us, so we recouped that value. So there are players on our roster right now that might not be seen as long term assets. And I think that's where Banton and I think Malachi are really in a competition now for that backup point guard spot. I'm going to dive deeper into Malachi, I think, next weekend's drop. Usually I drop it on Saturday. All right, so we'll continue though on this point. We'll check out his stats with the actual big league club, right? Age 22. So, like I said, young, decent. We like to get our guys around 22 and like 24, 25, kind of different seasoned developed prospects. We don't usually go really, really young because I think we like a bit of maturity and responsibility and understanding that this is a job and the NBA is hard work and you have to bring your lunchbox to work and put that work in, right? And I think Masai's always modeled and always wanted his leaders of the team to really exude that point of hard work is the key to success. If you want anything, you need to work at it, right? And you need to work smart about it. And also do everything that encompasses that work. Eating right, watching film, so upgrading your IQ to utilize those skills you're building in the gym better, right? See, I think ultimately you could see where Gary Trent kind of doesn't have that film watching IQ yet because he was watching film with the Trailblazers for a number of years versus now coming with us and watching defensive film and all these kind of different offensive set films and stuff like that. And guys that really know what they're talking about to point out different aspects. Like I'm pointing out different statistical numbers or different patterns. Sometimes you need a guy that kind of has that unique sight to see those things. And I think that's where those veterans matter. Like Thaddeus Young's really solid in that aspect. And I think Otto can watch film really well, probably bring that championship, like Golden State kind of style of reading. And then Kawhi, obviously, when he came, he brought that kind of Spurs style of watching film. So I think there's a really interesting collection of different film watchers that can really accelerate a team's IQ. And I think IQ is a big part in so many aspects, not just on the court, but off the court with development. And I think we need to prize IQ really highly the same way Masai does. And that's how kind of he chooses the vets he trades for and stuff. Guys that can hold their position, but also offer that next level of support and that vision and the IQ and the experience of actually playing the position and giving that knowledge to the next guy that's going to be playing that position, right? So the things that he actually needs to learn from a guy that has done it, right? I think that matters a lot, not just coaches and not just different things like that. I think player to player, I think the message is trusted more and there's like a different aspect to it, right? So let's continue on. Sorry, I didn't want to sidetrack too much there, but so 64 games played, one game started. Yep. Didn't play too many minutes. Obviously, he's a rookie, right? And he's doing G League, but we wanted to get him reps and get him recognized with the NBA game to see what he need to work at the G League level and during the summer and stuff. It's always good to get a good put put your toe in the water to kind of feel how cold it is or how hot it is, depending on different skills you have. So the longer burn initially, you can find out more that you need to work on. Then go down to the G League, get the reps, and get the time in to work on those basic skills that will eventually mold you into enough of a winning player that you could play more minutes on the big club, and then that process kind of like accumulates, right? More playing time, makes more mistakes, learns from more mistakes. And I think ultimately we need to understand each player's timeline with us and really take significance into how critical we are at looking at what the player does. Because I think I'm really critical of OG now because he's been in our system for so long, right? And I think we can be a little bit more critical of Fred Van Vliet. We can be more critical of Siakam. We can be more critical of Boucher because they've been here for so many years. But I think when you're looking at newer guys and stuff, I think you need to take how much they've been with us and how much they're actually learning the right material now into kind of weight, right? So minutes played, yeah, he got an okay role. He got spot minutes. He actually overtook Malachi's minutes because defensively, our pillars, right? He stands on the pillars. And I think that's where Malachi is. People want Malachi to be played, but to be honest, not gonna lie, he's lacking in the big pillar that Matt Thomas did defense. His defense, he was a great defender in college at those sizes, at those speeds, at those body styles. But at the NBA level, he's getting pushed around like a rag doll in a sense and getting blown by almost every play. Like he needs to definitely make a massive jump defensively or become a dead eye, right? Those are the two paths for Malachi at this point. Playmaking, we know he's got that kind of element, but I think it's the skill that can keep him on the court that matters. And I think it's either the shooting or the improved defense so he can be all around just not such a detriment on the court so he's able to get minutes. That's why Banton got more minutes. Defensively, he's more sound. He's able to defend his position a lot better and is a terrible, like, he terrorizes other guards that are smaller with his length and his size, right? The man's like huge and it's such an asset. So I think ultimately having that variance from Fred Van Vliet and Gary Trent Jr. and having a more lengthy, rangier kind of athletic guard like that is the kind of variance that Masai wants in the roster. He wants to have all kind of matchup levels and variants so Nick can play with different pieces and find the best matchups. But you need players that have unique skills and different set of skills at different like levels. So getting rid of Van Vliet because he's too small is the stupidest idea because when we come up against Curry, who do you think's going to stop him? You know what I mean? Like he needs to run around screens and stay on Curry's back, like stay on his hip pretty much. And bigger, slower guards that are bigger in size but not able to kind of navigate screens and has the IQ that Fred Van Vliet has, and that creates the issue. And that's where the creating the disconnect is currently in the 2020-23 season early with Fred Van Vliet's defense, which is always kind of misunderstood but they don't understand the kind of way he plays defense. He blows up plays like no one's business. He anticipates what they're doing on offense and kind of blows up secondary actions. He kind of lets the door creep a little bit open, and then once they put their hand in there, he shuts the door on the hand, right? So like there's a lot of mind games he plays on the court that a lot of kind of non-deep like observers, more casual fans of basketball don't see, but there are there, and he's very important. But let me continue back to Delano. So obviously not. We weren't looking for him to shoot. He wasn't ready to shoot. I'm not even gonna look at that. That's not a sample size. Like I said, you need more attempts to actually have more of a sample. He shot more threes in the G League, so I would take this sample size a little bit more than I would this one, even though it is a longer game, like more games, and this is over more, but the role is different, right? He's not on the court to shoot threes. He's on there to play defense and move the ball, right? And slash, right? So he got some slashing opportunities. I think we can't look at these stats too hard. I think the role, and he did when Masai drafted him, and Bobby said that he came out a year early. If he stayed in college one more year, they believe that he would have been closer to around where the lottery is as a pick and a prospect, because he would have been a little bit more developed and had more time. But I think bringing him in early even increases his range of being able to grow fast in our system and having the maximum years with him, right? So a lower age increases the maximum upside. So, but the Raptors can develop so quick with certain players. If they have enough experience, we can work with different things, right? And I think that's where the recycling aspect of some of the moves we make, like Stanley Johnson, Rondé Hollis Jefferson, or DeAndre Bembury, that was in the Tampa year, which we swapped out for Rondé, which were the two other spots that we talked about initially in the start of this video. But to tie all this back, I think it's ultimately about bringing guys in and kind of using the winning that we're doing to teach them how to be great players and actually learn how to win, because winning's what we do, right? And I think ultimately that's an asset. So we're instilling our value into the player and making their value rise by having them with us, right? So that's the Raptors developing value. And I think it really matters, because I think teams obviously don't have the development staff or the kind of people in the right decision making positions to develop these guys out properly and support them maybe the way that we do, right? And so ultimately, I think you need to also look at organization, draft position, caliber of draft talent when you're trading for picks. But when you're making sure bets, I think ultimately you'll turn out with a Banton in the end sometimes. But also, hey, he was a lower pick, but the guy in tandem with his situation at this moment is Malachi Flynn. And I think the future of that backup point guard position is really teetering. I think Doughton, if Flynn doesn't do well, Doughton steps in immediately, and he's kind of the precursor to Delano and eventually moving up into that point guard kind of position. And that's kind of what I said in my Raptors rotations video. It was almost like 2 months ago, but still coming true. A lot of the different things off of it. I kind of knew who was going to get cut and who wasn't and all that kind of stuff, but no need to toot the horn. So obviously this is a crucial year for our man Delano Banton. He's in the final year of his 2-year minimum rookie deal. So obviously, as a lower pick, he didn't have specific first round rights and a structured salary. So we could sign him to whatever we wanted. And so we signed Delano to 2 years minimum rookie deal, right? And he didn't actually get a two-way. This is not a two-way. This is a real NBA contract, right? And that's what Koloko got this year, but he got a 3-year for more money. So they obviously that would signal to me personally. That signals to me that they looked at him as more of maybe like a 20 to 25 pick and gave him that kind of sort of similar structure. Clutch is a hard negotiating people, and trust me, people aren't even seeing the Gary Trent thing yet, but obviously I went through it in my extension series finale. We could lose him for nothing this summer, and that's really a really interesting case that is going along how it's going along. But let me end it here for now and do some housekeeping. Sorry, guys. I meant to, it ran a little too long, and I didn't want to get it so long, but I felt so much about this kind of certain trade tree study, and I felt like it was really viable information. I'm going to salute out to the real ones, Raptors Freak Nation, salute, and Top Line Fam, salute. And I want to thank everyone that's kind of subbed, comment, liked, you know what I mean, talked about me, whatever, you know what I mean, promoted. If you did that, I don't know. I'm fine with growing the right way and not needing like a shock amount of viewers or subs. I want to grow this for more long-term process, but neither here nor there. I'll get to this thumbnail eventually, I promise, and I'll explain it. But I think this one went a little too long in my opinion, so I'm gonna end it here and say salute real ones. Logical Raptors Fanatic out. Mic drop.